I've struggled with personal feelings of anti-Black racism for a long time. I was born and raised in Ontario, and I've always been in very white spaces, and my parents have always really done a good job at instilling a lot of Black pride in me. But I think that being outside of a Black community changed my perspectives on Blackness outside of my family. And I didn't really see how that was affecting me at my core until I had a very rough time with my emotional and mental health in my mid-20s. Things got pretty dire to the point where it was like, I'm either going to fix this problem or I'm going to wallow, and then we don't know how deep this is going to go. And I went a while without having many people around me, and then I started reaching out to folks who understood what I was going through. And I went from having 1 or 2 Black friends that I'd had from when I was a kid to having an actual huge community. I realized that I could actually make things different for other people. I could be a part of what creates community and holds community, so that other folks don't feel so alone when they're going through something hard. Then Philando Castile was killed at a traffic stop in front of his partner and their child, and my heart broke all over again. And I decided that I wanted to make sure I was a part of Black Lives Matter, because I didn't think that people understood that Black lives mattered. Most of my life, I would have told you that things are just different in Canada, that we don't have the same problems as Americans do, and that our histories are so different that we don't have the same types of racism, and that it wasn't kind of a big deal. That's what I would have told you 5 years ago or 7 years ago. Through my processing of personal anti-Blackness and really starting to educate myself, I realized that that was a byproduct of very effective white supremacy. The idea is to divide and conquer. It's to kind of disassociate us and ourselves with our history and show us the best parts of it. We have this idea as Canadians that we're good, that we do peacekeeping, and that we're not as bad as our neighbors, but in doing that, we avoid our history and we pretend things are good when they are not. I was just scrolling on Instagram, and then I just saw like all of these videos of the same thing. And I wasn't sure what I was looking at. And I'm pretty sure I turned off my phone again for like a couple of days. Like I actually didn't process that for a very long time, because it was just so disgusting. Like even thinking about it now, how do you do that to someone? You know, George is calling out for his mom, his dead mom. Like, that was hard. But just to have that many people standing around not willing to do anything to help, you know, like you have 5 guys there that are all sworn to protect and serve, and not one of them is actually going to do that. Like, throw the whole thing away. Like, at that point, I think is when it was very clear that it doesn't matter if we're at the table now, we're flipping the fucking table at this point. There's no way that this can be fixed. There just can't be. Like, this shit happens all the fucking time. This shit is not new. It's been happening for a long ass time. That's why people are pissed off. And it was just so clear that there actually is no way out of this. There is no other option but to really throw everything away and reimagine what we actually want for all of these diverse situations. Public service, the people that we pay to do this work for us, like, that's a reflection of our own morality. And it's immoral for us to allow this to perpetuate, knowing why it's happening, knowing that it's rooted in systemic racism and white supremacy and in colonization, knowing that we have to move forward with the intention to not let that be a part of it anymore. Right now, we have 2 pandemics. We have this coronavirus pandemic, we have the poison drug epidemic. That's a pretty big issue, and we don't really have the resources apparently to solve it. But we are paying a lot of money for something else that's not working. So I think we need to look at what we don't like about our society, what we don't have solutions for right now, and really just with intention decide what we want to do there. Do we want to continue sending officers with guns to mental health issues? Do we want to continue allowing women to not have a very good resource if something happens to them? Because right now, if you're assaulted, the cops aren't doing much for you at all. In fact, most people don't even bother to report, because if you don't have like video evidence and 3 or 4 people to back you up, what's the point? We already know this. A lot of the real support you get from community doesn't happen through the police force. It happens through a patchwork of different community organizers, different support groups that will really actually help you get through it. We know how to fix it, but we don't have the money for it. We're willing to apparently let these things go so long to where we're in crisis mode and we're sending in the police. So what we need to do is to take a step back. For instance, for traffic violations, if somebody has a busted taillight, a ticket doesn't really fix the taillight. A ticket is money for the government to pay for the police force. Why not have a city employee that fixes your taillight? Why can't we imagine things that could work so much better? And it's not as if we don't have the option to still have a tactical unit for the rare occasions where things are violent. But even as it is now, our law enforcement isn't preventing much crime at all. They show up after something has gone wrong. The things that actually prevent these kinds of crimes that we're all so scared about, apparently, that's like social policy. That's the network that we're so proud of as Canadians. That's when we talk about our healthcare. We talk about, being able to support folks with disabilities. That's how we actually prevent crime, by giving people what they need to thrive. So if we focus on those things and we stop being greedy, then we can really imagine a society that we can be truly proud of. One that isn't just terrorizing Black and Indigenous people. If people don't want to examine their flaws and are only going to, kind of fall back on their ego, conversation doesn't go anywhere. I don't think it's imperative on any person to cater to white fragility anymore. I think that's been a huge deterrent to progress. People keep thinking that, we dealt with this in the civil rights era, or we had, feminism happened in the whatever, and this is all done. No, because white fragility and male fragility have stood in the way of progress the entire time. And we hear apologies and we go, okay, this is not a problem anymore because everyone knows it's bad, and we stop talking about it. But that doesn't help anybody. The guilt that somebody might feel when they get called out, I don't need your guilt. Nobody needs that guilt. What we need is for you to not do it again, to make sure that you learned what was wrong the first time, so that when you see it next time, you go, I did that last week. It was messed up and stupid. This is why it's bad, and you're doing it so I can understand. Let's talk about it. When it comes up, make sure that you address it. Don't let shit slide, because that is the kind of silence that perpetuates this kind of violence. The public can support Black Lives Matter Vancouver by first using Google, educate themselves on systemic racism, on use of force, on police violence, and on the land that we're on right here, right now. Start imagining what they want public safety to look like in their community. And so I think that would be one of the biggest things for people in Vancouver to do to support Black Lives Matter Vancouver, is to put pressure on the province and the city to not only defund the police, but also to radically change the Police Act, and to personally just imagine what would be the best case scenario. There are communities out here, the Black community. Right now, we're being very vocal about the fact that this has been happening for a long time, and it is hurting us, and that we do not go to the police when we have a problem. We know that our safety is an issue when that happens. If something happens in my family and, somebody's not doing so well, I'm not going to call the police first. I'm not. I don't know how that's going to work. I might get somebody good. I might get somebody trash. I don't know. And I think for a lot of people, they don't really know how to fathom that, because for white people specifically, that's not really been an issue. So I think the first step is listening and educating yourself. That's how we get out of this. I don't want to be in a place where the cops are still killing unarmed Black men and women. They're still going to wellness checks and murdering Indigenous women, where we have no solution to the many missing and murdered Indigenous women across this country. We all need to really focus our energies on the most marginalized people. We don't even have good numbers, like from the government, about how many trans women of color, Black trans women have been murdered, have been attacked, because they too don't feel safe going to the police all the time. So this just happens with impunity. We're not protecting our most vulnerable people at all. We need to really listen to the folks who are the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, and tend to them first, center them. With Black Lives Matter, we center the queer community, the trans community, because they are the most vulnerable and they are the most ignored and not listened to. We cannot have liberation without theirs. I see a lot more heavy police presence at Black Lives Matter protests or anything Black related, and the pressure is definitely strong, and I'm incredibly proud for anybody who's able to stand up to that and just go out there and make sure their voices are heard. Even for the Wet'suwet'en protests, people are out there saying this is not okay, because our silence allows these things to perpetuate. Our silence is what allows them to continue. In the end, we pay for this. So if you don't want to pay to have the RCMP go and disrupt Indigenous people on their sovereign territory, I think it's important to say that. Because if we all stay silent, then that just happens like it has been happening. That's how colonialism works. Really, it's a lifelong learning journey. Just to have compassion and to hear each other, and to really examine in what ways in our own lives we're allowing this to continue.